Good evening, everyone. If I can ask you to find a seat, we want to get started right on time. We have a lot of material for you tonight. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all to the City Hall chambers. Thank you for being here. We know the reason you're here, of course, is because your neighborhood and the community is dealing with, of course, what we're dealing with, which is really a natural disaster and some post-wildfire flooding. You're going to get a lot of information tonight that I hope is helpful. Just as a layout for the evening, you will see that we are going to have some opening remarks by some elected officials that are here with us this evening, and then we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk a lot about the modeling work that's been completed in the area. We'll talk about the event itself. We'll talk a lot about some of the short-term mitigations, and then we're going to open it up for about 15 minutes of just general questions, and I want to try to keep those as high level as possible so that everyone might apply that answer to your own circumstance. And then in the event you have an individual concern or question about maybe your property or a neighboring property, the smartest people trying to work on this issue will stick around for about the last half hour, and we have a series of maps throughout the room. Some are larger scale for the entire event. Others are smaller and more micro in scale to the actual specific areas of Savannah and into Coconino Estates. So again, welcome this evening. My name is Scott Overton. I serve as the city's Public Works Director, and I also serve as the Incident Commander for what we are calling our IMT, our Incident Management Team, for the post-wildfire flooding events in Flagstaff. The entire team, which you'll meet tonight, many of them are here. We won't take the time to introduce everyone, but as you meet them, they are all generally very knowledgeable about the issues. They're very kind. They understand some of the dynamics that you've been dealing with. Many of us have spent a lot of time in the museum flood area from the last couple of years, and then of course a handful have spent a ton of time on the Schultz side of the event from 2010, and then again Pipeline East from this year. So tonight, Pipeline West is the specific topic. Those neighborhoods will be covered, and we really want to get to the heart of the information, the meat and potatoes, and then really have an open dialogue with you all. So again, thank you for being here. I'm going to introduce Mayor Deasy, if he would come up, make his comments, and then shortly following will be Vice Mayor Sweet and Supervisor Hortzman. There she is right there. Thank you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you all for being here. These are very trying times, unprecedented times for our community. And, you know, we've been facing, it seems, disaster after disaster, whether that's from the museum fire floods, now with the Pipeline Fire West and Pipeline Fire East. And through this process, I know we are very much always wanting to know, what can we do? How do we do it? I will say that so many people around here are working their tails off to try to do everything we can to support each other through this process. And I'm looking forward to a very informed discussion this evening that will help us understand steps forward, be able to understand steps that have been taken to this point. And I just am glad that we were able to come together here for a community meeting to better address a lot of the questions, a lot of the frustrations, and how we move together as a community. Moreover, I'm very glad that we are making a lot of progress on long-term mitigation strategies. We've received funding to help with detention basins up north of the residential neighborhoods north of Coconino Estates to be able to implement these, but that's not going to happen this monsoon season. Know that this is something, though, that we are working desperately with our federal delegation, with our state delegation, to implement what we need to protect your homes in the long term. Nobody in our community should have to be living behind a pile of sandbags. So thank you again for everyone being here. Thank you to city staff for the preparation in this process. I know it was not, well, it was a lot of work now and, well, in the past. So thank you again, and I'd like to invite Vice Mayor Sweet up to the podium. And Supervisor Hauersman.
This is tall. Hi. I look out and I see a lot of faces that I have known for many, many years. And I wish we were here under different circumstances, but unfortunately, tonight's the night that we get to have this discussion. I do want to thank our team for putting this together and all of you for being here. When this started, I promised myself I would be here through the journey with you, and I stand here committed. I am here. We are here. I have tried to be open and honest about what's going on, along with my colleagues here and our team, and I think we've done a good job. I've been part of the frustration. I feel you. I have witnessed the power of community. It is amazing. And tonight I hope we all get to see the benefit of open and honest dialogue. These circumstances are very tough, but in the end, I know we can get through it together. So again, I thank you. I look forward to the discussion. This is an important night. I'm glad you're here, and welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, good evening, all. I appreciate the city's invite to be here because we're all part of this community. And I look around and see so many friends and neighbors and people that we have gone through so much with here in Flagstaff and in Coconino County. And, you know, I want to thank you for your resiliency. And please know, and I think you do, we are, as a city and county, working together and doing everything we can to assist in the mitigation efforts. In the short-term mitigation efforts, we're going to do the best we can, but they are not going to be enough. The long-term mitigation efforts, we are working very closely with the city. We are working very closely with our federal partners. I have to tell you that both Senator Kelly and Sinema have reached out numerous times, as has Representative O'Halloran. They said, what do you need? And what we've said is, we need federal monies to help us with these long-term mitigation processes. It is beyond the capabilities of the city, and it is beyond the capabilities of the county to do what we need to do to assist in the long-term mitigation. We've lost 9 watersheds. And we can't continue a cycle of wildfires in the spring and post-wildfire flooding during the monsoon season. We can't afford it, and the financial cost is only exceeded by human suffering and human loss. So we do need to take a look at long-term mitigation, but we need to go beyond that. We need to look at forest restoration and forest health. We need to bring our forests back into a level where we can minimize the risks of forest fires. And that is a huge responsibility. It's one that the county has worked very hard with, the city and our partners in the U.S. Forest Service, and quite frankly, also our senators and representatives. We must demand that they take care of the west side of the San Francisco peaks. You know that if tunnel and pipeline had gone west and not east, what we are seeing now would be tenfold within the city of Flagstaff. So we have a lot to do as a community. We have a lot to do as the people you put your faith and confidence in to help lead this city and this county, and we together are going to have to get it done because failure is not an option here. So thank you for your patience, for your commitment, for your resiliency, and we will get this done.
All right, thank the 3 of you for your comments and support. We've appreciated it. Tonight you're going to get a lot of technical data, and you hear the passionate pleas about some of the issues we're dealing with, but tonight we're going to talk a lot about the work that's been going on and how to best address some of this. If I can get the engineers, both private, the public engineers, county, city, and the IMT team, just to stand up for a minute, just so everyone can kind of put your eyes on the people that are in the room. If you have a role, I'd like you just to quickly stand up so everyone kind of sees who's around the room and working either on the IMT, the incident management team, or a city or a county engineering team. Again, private, public, both agencies. These folks are the smartest people in the room that are working this problem. And I've appreciated every one of their efforts, and they're sincere, and they're here to help. So put a name to a face tonight and ask your hard questions. They're smarter than I am by far. And I really do appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much. And they're going to help you try to understand your question this evening. There we go. So just quickly, as we know, to give you some perspective, this is a burn severity map, and we are aware that the pipeline fire began on the western side, right about here, just north of Schultz Pass Road at the Y. You may have seen this in the community more just like a red line, or during the actual fire from last month. You might see this on the nightly news or in the papers. But the black line represents the boundary of the pipeline fire. And then this map has some coloration that Joe's going to get into next on how he created some of our model work. And this burn severity map shows us a couple things. It shows us the footprint of the fire, and then it shows us the vegetation devastation in certain areas within the burn. Red is more severe and the highest of burn severities, and the greens and yellows are not as damaged, and then of course the bright green is an unharmed area but still had fire. Your community in the Schultz Creek watershed, which is the primary watershed, there's two that Joe's going to speak to, is the one that is most directly impacted. And as he speaks to the watersheds in some of the next slides, you'll see how this burn scar map overlays those watersheds and the impact. We are not going to spend time this evening to talk about the watersheds on the east side of the pipeline fire. Those are all right here, and Supervisor Hortzman had presented these. They also burned in the Schultz fire, devastating impacts to Pipeline East. Tonight we want to focus our conversation right in here, and this trapezoid shape of the watershed and how it affects the two watersheds that enter the city of Flagstaff. Joe Lovrich from J.E. Fuller is going to take over from here and do his best job at explaining to you how we do what we do from the modeling perspective.
All right, thanks, Scott. Okay, I'm going to run through some components of this, and so just bear with me if there's some, like I said, if there's some bigger picture questions at the end, feel free to ask. I think what's good to do up front here is to get some perspective on where we're at, and specific to the west side, where that's coming from on the mountain. So for those of you that know the mountain well, this area right here, I hope everybody can see the mouse moving. This area here is Weatherford Canyon. That's where the Weatherford Road goes up to Doyle Saddle. That area drains down to the east, right? That's the watershed that got really burnt. That goes east. The area that comes down to hit Schultz Creek itself is this triangle that's right on the face, towards the end of Freeland Prairie Road, where the gate is on Freeland Prairie Road, and where the Kachina Trail ends. And so this area comes down through a few tributaries that I'll show you, and then down the main flow path of Oak Creek. Schultz Creek, sorry. So there's two primary watersheds here, though. There's Schultz Creek, and then there's Chimney Springs. It's a small finger of a watershed that really goes almost all the way up to the top of Fremont. It comes down. These two split above Cheshire. So there's this triangle at Cheshire that does not have any post-fire burn effects. So you're either getting the water coming off of Chimney Springs or off of Schultz Creek that comes around by the city water tanks. So what we can see here is on this side of the screen, the red is high burn severity. So that means the fire effects on the soil are very high. You can have some water repellency with the soil so that when the water hits when the raindrops hit the soil, they run off very easily and they can carry the ash and the sediment with it. The yellow is a moderate burn severity, so it doesn't act as responsive as the high severity, but what we found in museum and both with this, it acts very near to the high severity. So all these little fingers, they feed down into Schultz Creek. And those of you that know the area, know all these come across Schultz Pass Road. They all feed right into Schultz Creek. Chimney Springs wasn't burnt as bad, not as much high severity, and it's a smaller portion. So some stats. Chimney Springs, about 34% of that watershed above the neighborhood was burnt. Schultz Creek, about 29% of the watershed was burnt. So if you look at the watershed as a whole, about 7% of Schultz Creek is high burn severity. Chimney, about 2% was high burn severity. So I think this is kind of telling as far as you're seeing this kind of impact on a quarter of the watershed being burnt. It's pretty striking. So just to show you kind of what's going on in the watershed and how things change through a monsoon season. So I was up on Thursday evening looking at some things on Schultz Pass Road. This spot is where one of the tributaries come across. It had been washed out a little bit. This is up towards the top. The Friday's storm did this to it. So now it's about a 10-foot deep, about 8-foot wide trench that wiped out the whole road. So what happens is very quickly you can have channel changing events, right? That they either concentrate the flow or they makes it more efficient for the flow to translate down to the neighborhoods. Now, what's important to realize when I'm talking to you about our modeling results, there is a lot of variability. If I were up here and said, this is exactly what's going to happen with exactly this rainfall, that wouldn't be true, because rainfall itself is a high variable item. So when you look at, this is a screenshot of just yesterday when I was preparing this presentation of what it looked like. So you have radar, you have patches of higher severity rain, you have areas where there's no rain, you might have rain happening right next to one of the rainfall gauges, a quarter mile away, and the rainfall gauge is not picking it up, but it's hitting on next to it. So there's a lot of variability in the rainfall. There's also sediment and debris that, as it builds up in channels, it can change the paths that the water takes when it gets there. Where you get a tree hung up somewhere in a channel, water's going to take a different route, right? Another variability, and this gets down into the neighborhood, is as sandbags go in to protect things, those sandbags then change flow paths just a little bit, right? So depending on if the whole property is lined or if the sandbags are against the house, it has different effects. When you take water and you squeeze it, it gets faster, it gets deeper. So those are some things that can affect maybe how you're understanding how the water is flowing down. The other thing, and I alluded to this, are watershed changes. This picture right here is the Weatherford Canyon tributary where it crosses the Waterline Road right now. So it's about 15 feet deep and about 30 to 40 feet wide. And this has just happened. This is another picture of Upper Schultz Creek. So as these things happen, it makes the water more efficient flow paths to get down into the neighborhoods. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to I got 4 slides. I'm going to step down from the north to the south and tell you kind of how we're seeing the modeling and maybe how this correlates to the maps that we got in the back. And if you want to look at something specific later, we can do that. So these are flood depth results. So the depth of the water at its maximum stage. And what you can see here is if it's light blue, it's 0.2 to 0.5 feet, so up to 6 inches. Lighter or darker blue is 0.5 to 1. You get into greens, it's 1 to 2. Light green is 2 to 3, and it steps up from there. So that's the depth of the water. Schultz Creek, you know, and sorry, one more thing to step back to. These are, for those of you who listened in on the public or the city council meeting a few weeks back, these are really, really similar to what you saw there. There's been some modeling updates that we've done because this is all very fast-paced, kind of dynamic modeling as we're going through it, but these are really close to what you saw before. And these are all the maps that are being used to help understand how mitigation should be installed. So Schultz Creek comes down, what you see here, this is the 20-acre city parcel right next to the Y of Schultz Pass Road and Mount Ellen Lookout Road where everybody parks. Comes down here, there's a split flow as it crosses Schultz Pass Road to the main channel and auxiliary channel to the west. This flow path here is Chimney Springs, comes down towards Creighton and crosses 180. Right at Creighton, there's a split where water will come down in a pond at Magdalena, then continue across 180. What you're seeing here is these storms, they aren't all contained to channels. So when you have a small event, maybe the water is all contained in the channel, and as you have a larger event, it begins to overtop, change, go into a separate channel. That's what's happening right here at Creighton, where most of the times you'll see it just in the channel. When you get enough water, it begins to spill over.
And Joe, I hate to interrupt you. What is the rain impact to get to this result?
Yeah, so this is, what we're showing you right here is a 2-inch rainfall in 45 minutes. And the reason we're modeling that is we have a series of gauges on the mountain that go back to 2010 that were installed right after Schultz. So those gauges, we have all the data from all the rainstorms that happened since then. What we can do is we can look at the rainstorms that caused damage, that caused significant flooding downstream, and have some correlation of how intense those storms are. So what we did was, same thing for museum, we developed a rainstorm that is basically mimicking a rainstorm that happened during the Schultz, it happened after the Schultz fire. And what we're finding is that typically when you have these short duration, high intensity rainfalls, you end up with a very similar type storm event. Sometimes the storms are longer than 45 minutes, a little tailing off on each end, but a lot of times the intensity is quite similar to what we were modeling. So it gives a good picture of how you get a real intense burst of rain, a real peak of a hydrograph that comes down and flows through the neighborhood. One other thing to talk about model variability, especially in Coconino Estates, is storm duration, meaning the length of the storm, and the intensity. So a very short duration storm, if you think if it's only raining for 10 minutes, but it's raining really heavy, it's not a lot of volume of water. To get water to flow all the way through Coconino Estates, you have to have a pretty significant volume of water. So you need a storm that's a little bit longer, up to, the 45-minute is what we're showing, where you have enough volume that it can actually translate all the way down through the neighborhood. Is that?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so as we're coming down through here, there's some water that you see on this map that is not due to fire, okay? In our modeling, we rain over the entire modeled area. So we have that rainfall falling everywhere. So you see some water on the roads. In Cheshire, this water is not from the fire. Water is just from local runoff. The Chimney Springs, it comes down through either the Peakview Channel here or down the Rio de Flag Channel, towards, crosses at the park, comes down behind the museum, and translates on downstream. Schultz Creek, it's going behind the museum, behind Peaks, the Peaks facility, and it comes down towards Creekside, where it crosses through a couple of culverts, and on down towards the neighborhood. And this is where the results get interesting. The Schultz Creek, as it comes out towards 180, and this is exactly what you guys saw on Friday, is it'll spread out, but what it does first is there's a pipe in 180. It's a large pipe. It starts as a box culvert. It transitions to a 60-inch CMP, a corrugated metal round pipe that flows down to the corner of right above the Stevana neighborhood, and that's where it transitioned into a smaller pipe. So as the water comes through the larger pipe, it bubbles out of the ground. Everything that can't get through the small pipe comes back out of the ground and flows into Stevana. That water then ponds in Stevana because at Stevana there's only a small drain to get the water out, which is why the residents dug a trench through here to help drain that. Now, as that pipe gets flowing first, then the water will start to flow down towards Sechrist. So you can have an event that flows to Stevana and towards Sechrist without hitting this upper part of Coconino Estates. When you get enough water, the pipe capacity is exceeded, and Highway 180 acts as a big weir, so the water begins to go across 180 in various places. Once that water is across 180, it begins to flow down through Coconino Estates, and it's really hard to get into the Rio de Flag from the middle part of Coconino Estates. And as you all saw down here at Meade, this is a really tough spot because it's a low point with some small drains, and the only way for that water is south through the houses. So it goes through the houses, on down towards Kutch, Navajo, Murray, Whiting, and so generally once you're past Meade, what we're showing for this event is it's less than a foot deep, which generally confines it to the road. And this is where I was talking about storm volume plays a big role, because we didn't see much water get past Beale. In the storm on Friday, there just wasn't enough volume of water to actually get past there. If you get a bigger storm with more volume, it's going to go past. So, and right here, there's some storm drains, some new storm drains that feed back to the Rio, which will help, which is not in this model right now. That's something I have to add to it later, but that gives you the brief overview. And Sam, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Sam. I'm with the City of Flagstaff. During these events, we actually run a incident management team to help kind of organize our response efforts. And we're going to go over just a little bit of what you all have probably seen out there, but maybe help explain what's going on our side and what we're coordinating and how we're moving out there in the field. So just a quick overview. We've had 5 events so far. I know that out of those 5 events, only 4 of them have actually had impacts into the community. We did have one that stayed within the drainage system, but we still count that as an event, as we saw flows out of the forest on those. Operationally, the impacts, the first pieces that we look at are road closures. Our biggest and number one goal is to get messaging out to the public and to close the roads to make sure we don't bring any additional visitors into the area. Travelers, 180 is a great traveling corridor, and we try and close that off to reduce the impact so our first responders can get in there if need be, and our crews can get in and take care of the roads as necessary. This is kind of a unique dynamic where we're dealing with this particular flood because there's so many partners involved. And I know that, you know, the county's dealing with the same thing on their side, but here we have a dynamic between county, city, state, ADOT, we've got fire, PD. It's truly a team effort out there trying to coordinate all of the resources and to make sure that we're meeting as many of the needs as possible during these events. So during and after an event, this piece right here is really to help people understand what the expectation is, what our hope is of the residents. We understand that when things are happening and you're dealing with the water, and you may need to protect your home, do what you need to do there. However, our first and foremost ask is that you shelter in place. Anytime you deal with flood waters, the last thing we want anybody doing is being out in the water. I don't care if it's a foot deep, you don't know what's under there. You don't know if something's washed out. You don't know if a storm drain is open. You don't know what's under that water. So stay out of the water if possible. That's the best thing you can do for us until the water subsides. Then we can actually get in there and do some good work. If your property is directly affected and you had debris, flood debris, wind up on your property. So we're talking about some of the sediment, some of the sticks, branches, twigs, whatever it might be. If you're able to, you can move that out to the road, coordinate with our resources. You can call it into our call center line. Let us know that you moved that out to the road and we'll come out and clean it up. Make sure you move it out far enough that equipment can get to it. If you put it half on the sidewalk and half in the street, we can't get to all of that. And we'll do our best to help get that debris out of there, but we can't go onto private property to remove the debris. But we will help out as much as we can. I know several people have had impacts where they've had debris and sediment in the property, and we'll support that as needed. So please just let us know, but stay in contact with us. We have a service request line that's up. It's the 213-2102. You can see it on the end there. If you've had any kind of damage to your home, interior, exterior, call it in, let us know. Big piece of that for tracking purposes is the recovery side to make sure that we can document and find additional ways to get resources into the area and support residents. There's only so much we can do as a city, but we are really good at having the right people in play to help find resources. So let us be a resource for you. From here, what we're going to talk about is some of the short-term mitigation. I'll hand it over to Ed.
Thank you, Sam. So Ed Schenk, Stormwater Manager here at the city. I'm going to talk over the short-term and long-term mitigations, starting with short-term mitigations. Sandbags are recommended for residents, obviously, who have been impacted by the flooding. The purpose of these flood maps is to help you identify if you're impacted. Again, this is just a modeled flood, as Joe was going over. So just because you see, you know, half an inch or half a foot or a foot of water on your property doesn't mean that that's what you need to mitigate towards. I mean, if you decide that you need more mitigation, please take that upon yourself. We recommend sandbags around the primary residence, so sandbagging your house. And the reason we say that and not the property line is, as we were talking about, this Stevana and Coconino Estates acts a little bit different than what we see in the Museum Fire. In the Museum Fire area, on the Sunnyside area, there's quite a bit of grade, so there's quite a bit of slope. Water drains rather quickly, and we can move it out of the neighborhood quickly. In Coconino Estates, it's much flatter. In some areas, it's actually sumped, so you have an area that is bathtub effect, if you will. So if we do put sandbags out at those property lines, we're actually increasing that flood flow to your neighbors. And I think that's explained right there as well. One thing to know, sandbag materials are in short supply in this region just due to the amount of need, especially on Pipeline East. So please bear with us as we try to provide those resources. In some areas we will recommend barrier, but that's pretty rare here in the Coconino Estates and Stevana area based on the velocities that we expect to see. I will mention one other thing before I move on to long-term. If you need help with short-term mitigation, so if you need a better understanding, today is a great day to talk to some of our engineers about your particular property. But also you can call into that same call center number, so 213-2102, to ask for an assessment. And we can get one of our contract engineers out there to take a look at your property and give you some advice on how to do a sandbag wall or what type of sandbag wall that we would recommend. Most of you have probably already talked to some of these folks, but if not, feel free to ask today or to call that number. Moving on to long-term mitigations, I'm going to keep this short because there's a lot of moving parts here, but we have one that's very exciting, at least on our side. We think it's a really big win. We've been working with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. They are part of USDA, Department of Agriculture, which is the Forest Service is also part of. And they have a program called the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, EWP. And under that, they have a sub-program, the exigency program. I have a really hard time saying that, which is an emergency program within the emergency program, if you will, for funding of post-fire flood impacts based on federal lands. So as this fire was going on, we actually reached, or shortly after that, we reached out to NRCS, and we have been able to, as I believe the mayor mentioned earlier, get an award of roughly $2.4 million for detention basins upstream of the community. So this is a really big deal. It's a really big win for both the county and the city in helping mitigate some of these. What we're talking about short term right now, this is going to really move us towards a longer term solution, not shouldn't say solution, a longer term mitigation strategy that should put us in a much better spot. So in this map here, that sort of pink or magenta square at the very top, this is a 20-acre city-owned parcel of open space near the Schultz Y, if you're familiar with that area. You know, it's a popular parking spot for hikers, runners, mountain bikers, etc. With that 20-acre parcel, we are just finalizing a design for 3 detention basins. So these would be inline detention basins, taking the majority of the Schultz Creek flow. As each basin fills, it fills into the next basin and then meters back into Schultz Creek itself. We expect to start construction on this very soon. We actually have a contractor in place and we'll be moving this forward. We expect that to mitigate a fair amount of those smaller flows. The flows that we've been seeing this year will be mostly mitigated. There will still be need for other long-term mitigations for those larger, rare flows, and those are, we're still working through those process with our federal partners and also with the county to provide more long-term mitigation for Schultz Creek. All right, and with that, I'll move on to Wes.
Hi, good evening all. My name is Wes Deason. I'm your Coconino County Emergency Manager. My role here tonight is to talk to you a little bit about how we can reach out to you when things are happening, when problems are approaching, when our gauges start to indicate there's trouble coming, how we can reach out to you. How many of you have signed up for our emergency notification system? Everybody's hands are up? I'm done. Hopefully, please pass this to your neighbors, those of you who haven't. When it is imminent that we're going to see some type of flow or threat or storm that's going to bring danger into the community, be it west side, be it museum, be it east side, it doesn't matter. We are in lockstep with the city. We communicate with them all the time. Sam calls me way too often. We have good contact. We have good working relationship. If there's a need, if there's a threat approaching, we can and we will reach out to you through that system. We'll call you on your phone. 2 o'clock in the morning is our preferred time. We will send you an email. We'll send you a text message. We'll do whatever we can to get information to you in an advanced fashion as much as we can. And again, we do that based on really working very close with the Weather Service. They tell us what's happening. We look at the rain gauges. They tell us what's happening. And we make really careful and cautious, educated moves to get information out to you as soon as we can. The system is free. It's very confidential. The information is held in our office. We do not share it with anybody, period, for any reason. We don't sell your information. We don't pass it out at events, nothing like that. It's safe, good information. Please sign up. Please encourage your neighbors to sign up. There's some really cool stuff in the back. If you need a mouse pad, so you can use that while you sign up. Some mouse pads back there. Some bumper stickers to cover the damage on your bumpers from backing into other cars. You can get some bumper stickers out there. So please take it on the back table in the back there. Now, I think one of the things that's really important is an understanding of the systems that we use. And I think I need to advance here. Nope, wrong way. Nope, okay. We use two different systems. We use RAVE, which is the emergency notification system that the county, my office, maintains. And RAVE works on a system of a polygon. See the yellow diagram up there? That's a polygon that we would pick for a specific area that is potentially facing an imminent threat. We plot that on a map, physically. We design the message. We design how we want to deliver the message, text, email, voice, and then we send that message out. That message will hit your phone or your email if you're registered at an address inside that yellow circle. It's pretty concise. It's not exact. The edges on here should kind of be fuzzy, but really that's how it works. It targets those individuals who have registered in that area. We use a second system called Ipaws, Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. That's a system that's run by FEMA. We have administrative rights to it. We don't own it. We don't facilitate it. We have administrative rights to use it. Ipaws is quite a bit less discriminating. And I say less discriminating because it works off of cell towers. You'll see the blue circle right there. It goes out and it hits cell towers in the area that we are trying to notify. But you'll notice a big chunk of that blue is not in the yellow circle. So you might be in the very top of that circle up there, of that blue circle right up there. Maybe you're camping up there. And you might get the notice that there's problems coming. It may not be directly for you because of where you're at. We don't control that. And it's just a reality of how these systems work, how cell towers work, how radio waves carry things like that. So we use both because, as we know here, we've got a lot of visitors that do camp, that come up here to sightsee. They are not registered into RAVE. They live in the valley. They live in other parts of the country. They're not registered in our system. They're not going to get our notice. So we overlay the two systems to try to notify as many people to get them out of harm's way as possible. The yellow circle is a very, very focused effort. The blue one is a little bit less concise, but equally important. So please make sure you get yourselves, your family, your neighbors registered. As soon as something is coming and as soon as we have the opportunity to notify you, we will. We do not use this system for, hey, there's a barbecue on Saturday downtown. We don't do that. We only use it for imminent life-threatening issues. If you hear from us, please listen to it. Please pay attention. Please do what's instructed. My office does not give instructions. Those instructions are coming from your fire officials, your law enforcement officials, your city officials, right? I'm not making that determination. I'm just passing the message along. If the fire officials say it's time to go, pretty good chance it's time to go. We use this system during the tunnel fire. I've been told by some of the fire guys, peak winds were 72 miles an hour. That fire was moving so fast, there was no way we could go door to door, right? No loss of life. No loss of life. A lot of it was due to the firefighting efforts, to law enforcement in the area, and to this system. It's a layered approach. It works. We've had no loss of life, and that is really, for me, that's the bottom line. We'll fix your fence. We'll fix your garage. We'll replace your carpet, fix your house. No loss of life. That's the goal of this system. So please register. Please get the word out. Get your neighbors engaged, and stand by for that Sunday morning wake-up call. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Wes, appreciate that. So hearing that, this is how we kind of message or we track our thresholds. So based on the modeling, based on the information we know, and based on the time frames and the expected flow rates, we've designed these thresholds for notifications. You'll see threshold 1 is at the bottom there in that yellowish color. That one there is at 0.40 inches in 15 minutes. That right there is enough for us to know that it's time to send out city staff. We stand up what we call a flood director system. That system is designed to have spotters in the field to ground truth what we're seeing. The last thing we want to do is send out messaging when we don't need to. Even more so, we want to make sure that we need to send out messaging sooner if we have to. So the best thing we can do out of all the technology we have out there is truly having people in the field and spotting where this is and what we're going to see. The one that you all are going to receive, and you probably have received, is threshold 2. That's when we know it's time. We're going to see some sort of an impact. Now, how much of that impact, I don't know. That's the hard part. When these messages go out, we can't tell you if you're going to see a foot of water or 3 inches of water. But most likely, you're going to see some sort of an impact, and that's why the message goes out ahead of time. It gives us some time to prepare, to make sure we have staff in play, and that we can get some of these road closures in, make sure we have all of the equipment needed, and really give you as much time as possible to prepare or do whatever it is you need to do to stay out of the way of the flow path. But these are the thresholds that we use and the process that we go through, but really it's all key on if you registered for the system. Most of these notifications you'll see are going out as a registration only. However, they have been targeting with Ipaws because of that high frequency that we see of our traveling and visitors that come through. With that, we'll jump into real quick talk about sandbags. I know most of you probably don't want to talk about sandbags, and I apologize for that, but if you're looking for sandbags, there's 2 primary locations we have for self-fill sandbag sites. So the Aztec Road right here on the back side of the Thorpe Sports Parks on the left-hand side of the screen. As you pull into the parking lot there, you'll see that there's a self-fill site, actually, I'm sorry, right here, just below the star. And then if you know where Schultz Pass Road is off 180, out where Schultz Pass splits from Mount Eldon Lookout, you also see a self-fill site there, as well as we have a whole bunch of pre-filled sandbags that in conjunction, and very grateful of the Flood Control District in supporting getting some self-fill or pre-filled sandbags out there. They're currently staged as of tonight. There are hundreds out there, thousands. So if need them, go get them. They're there. We'll restock them as necessary. But key locations to remember if you need sandbags.
Hope you guys are hanging in there with us. Some good information, though. Thank you. So, Stacy, City of Flagstaff. I'm the Grants, Contracts, and Emergency Management Director, and been here 38 years. Been doing disaster recovery since 2005. So, I feel everybody here. I know we've had a lot of incidents in many years, and but we're a very tight community, and so I'm blessed to be here, and I've raised my kids here. So. Thanks for being here today, though. I appreciate you all coming out, and we're trying to get out there, and the city staff have been amazing, and the community members, all of you, what you've been doing together. I drive the streets. You guys are all helping each other. It's just, it touches me, and it's very passionate to be able to live here. I know you all care about this community. So. A little bit about flood insurance. I know you've been hearing about it. Please visit FEMA.gov. Flood insurance remains, really the only way to be reimbursed for the damages right now. The magnitude of the event does not qualify right now for a FEMA individual assistance funding. We are tracking homes. Amy Hagan in the back there is now our disaster recovery chief, and program and the public assistance program with myself, and we go out and we track damage. We ask that you do that call line. Sam talked about it earlier, to make sure that if you need a interior damage assessment or exterior, that we'll get out there, we'll get somebody out there, get a report done for you, so that at least you have that for your records. Continue to take precautions to physically mitigate your property. We continue to work with partner agencies to see how we can help. Ed talked about the NRCS grant award agreement. We have been pushing super hard on that, and that was received the other day. So we're pretty excited to get that grant, to get the basins, sediment basins done. And they're a huge partner too. They came out here right away. They responded. They worked with us to find the funding to help mitigate this problem. There's Small Business Association also is out there. They provide loans, so if you do need to reach out, there's some resources. And United Way also has a funding source. They have some funding available for interior damage and other damage. So if you haven't reached out to United Way of Northern Arizona, they do have funding, and they may be able to help with some carpet damage or something, so please reach out to them. And then if you haven't got on the Flagstaff AZ Gov Pipeline West website, please get on there. There's frequently asked questions about insurance, flood insurance, a lot of great information. Sarah Langley, our public information officer, is here. She's excellent at posting information right away. She's trying to keep that updated, so please look at that. Please ask if you have questions to that email, and then please send a note to that 213-2102 to get a damage assessment done if you'd like one done. Again, I can't say enough to thank you for being here and talking with all of us and our city partners, county, Therese, hi, and everybody. We have ADOT, like I said, they said earlier, the county has been amazing. I know the university has been a part of it, ADOT, FUSD. There's been many, many, many partners, even from private associations that are trying to be a part of it with you in this community to help out. So, so thank you to all of them, and if I didn't mention, thank you. And with that, I am going to go to general questions.
All right, so you had a lot of information tonight, and what I'd like to do is take about 10 minutes and just raise your hand. I will repeat your question if we can't hear you, and there are a couple mics if they can get them around, but I'll make sure you all hear the question, and then we'll call on one of the experts that's most appropriate to answer your question. And then as it gets close to 7, we'll probably stop the formal piece of the presentation, and then we'll be here until 7:30 to go through maps, ask individual questions. So at this point, general questions, and I'll start here. Try to keep them fairly high level. We'll start. Do I get to speak from here? Sure.
I'm in the crosshairs of this flood. I live on Mead where it kind of comes into a V. Oh, thanks.
Okay.
And this is a special event. It's not like this happens every day because of the fire. But I did want to point out that there is an underlying problem on Mead. It has, you talked about smaller pipes, you know, in various neighborhoods. On my side of the street, the storm drain pipe is bigger. On the other side, the north side, is a lot smaller. So even in an ordinary big thunderstorm in the summer, that street floods, just routinely. And so this, you know, my house is flooded. I'm temporarily homeless. So, you know, and it would have happened anyway, I suppose, with this event. But I want the city to understand that something needs to be done besides building basins to prevent catastrophic flooding. That it suffers ordinary flooding several times a summer. And I don't know who to talk to or what to do to get it fixed. I've talked to people in the city over and over. And I'm not the only one. My neighbor, I was exposed to COVID, so he couldn't be here to say some of the same things, but he was flooded too.
Certainly
anyway.
Sorry to hear about your situation on Mead, and not only are we looking at the longer term things like the basins and on-forest work, because we need the on-forest work to work well so our basins don't get filled with sediment. We're gonna have to assess with the smartest engineers the entire infrastructure all the way to the Rio, and you're gonna see that activity for years, and it just takes time. But we understand that infrastructure that's in the ground today may have had issues prior, but now they're compounded because now we're dealing with a compromised watershed. So tonight, make sure we speak with those engineers at that specific location. But it's certainly something we're gonna have to look at just beyond the basin. So excellent point, and that is not left unknown. Right now we're dealing with the emergency, but we certainly understand the infrastructure itself is undersized.
One other thing, my neighbor who was exposed to COVID asked me to say, people are speeding along Mead, and there's a lot of dust, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, just great point. We have worked with our PD friends to help with enforcement, and we are running extra street sweeper shifts through the streets department in the overnight hours. It takes a long time to pick up dust. We learned that a lesson in the museum SCAR. It will take weeks for that fine dust to get picked up, but we will continue to run sweepers in the area, and we ask for patience. And of course, speed is a big issue for neighbors
just a sign saying
throughout.
Slow down. And
Gotcha. Sure,
Yeah.
excellent suggestion. Yeah, and we've used some messaging, and Sam's taken notes.
And also, if they could clean out the storm drains, that would be nice.
You got it. I'm gonna go all the way over here, and then let me come back.
A quick question. I've seen a lot of really good information fly by on the screen, and I would love to be able to look at that at my leisure at home. So if you could post a link to a PowerPoint file or individual maps, I'd love to have a chance to look at those carefully. Thank you.
Excellent point. It'll all be posted. Sarah will be sure to have it all. Yep, this meeting is linked, so you can watch the recording again, watch Joe's presentation again, and all of the materials will be posted on that link. Where was it? Right there. Okay, sir.
Yes, sir, no worries. I'll make this quick, but I'm a couple doors down from Mrs. Reed right there on Mead, but this is not really a Mead lane question, I guess. But during the heat of battle, when that water was rising quickly, I was fortunate to have enough sandbags 2 weeks before so that I had half a sandbag before it would have entered the house in a pretty full way. And you're exactly right. I mean, those models you guys did was the only thing that saved us is us studying those models and being ready. But the disconnect, I think, for most of us is how much, and I know there's a lot of factors, but how much rain falling determines how much mitigation you need to have. And the reason I'm saying this is because real time, even though you want us to stay inside, there was no way in hell we were staying inside because the water was rising, and we knew between us and neighbors, just happenstance, that we had to flow that water around the houses. And I had never heard anybody tell us, especially in the catcher's mitt of all this stuff, what to do to flow it around the houses. And so what happens now is we've built highways of sandbags going through the backyards into the backyards of the neighbor, and they're trying to do it. And my ask of you guys, which I think is maybe the most valuable thing you can do short term, is to have somebody with some engineering horsepower come visit us and walk through what we are doing to let that flow go through, because it is the only thing that will keep stuff there. And the reason I'm tying this back to the amount of rain is because ideally, if I could wave the magic wand, I would have some knowledge of saying, hey, great that you guys, that last one was 1.2 inches or whatever. You're modeling on 2 inches. I'd like to prepare for 4 inches so I can actually relax a little bit, but I need to know how much that means I need to prepare for and how to get the water around such that you guys are like, yeah, that's about as good as you can do if it rained 4 inches,
Excellent question. Joe, do you want to take a stab at why we use 2 inches? Please, you can use that microphone there. Sorry, Joe.
That's a really good point. So when we're doing this modeling, we model a whole range of events. And so 2 inch seems to be a pretty significant event that is seen across the watershed. So if you look at all these rainfall gauge stats, 2 inch covers probably 90% of all the different rainstorms you'd find. So it's a good kind of conservative yet not all encompassing. On the museum fire last year, that one of those storms was over 3 inches. Right. So it's there, but yeah, I mean, to that point, there's data for higher.
Just to be very specific and helpful for everybody, I want to say kudos to you guys for giving us a little bit of a roadmap to how to flew, because none of us are in this game like you guys are. But ideally, when I saw what happened with what I understood was 1.2 inches, 8 inches of rainfall, now the wall in front of my house is now double height, right, just in case. And so that's why I say, hey, great that you guys are out 2. I'd like to know what happens if 3 comes, and then let's plan for that so that all of us can relax. But the real ask is to have somebody with engineering come look at the structures that we built as amateurs and give us some confidence that water will flow out even if it's 2 inch.
Yeah, let's follow up with that specific they're here tonight. So let's make sure we talk through that. Let's go 2 more questions, and then I'm going to let you have it with the engineers. Oh, did you already have a cue, Paul? No. Okay.
My question regards the culverts along the Rio and how much sediment is starting to collect in those. Is there any plan to clean those out at any point?
So there's a lot of culverts in the area. The city, there's also some different jurisdictional pieces. The city's crews have been in the area working those. It's fairly slow. It's hard to vacuum out a pipe. It's a labor-intensive project, but they've been out and they will continue to be out after every storm event. Our partners at ADOT are trying to work on their infrastructure as well. A lot of their infrastructure goes under Highway 180. They have a good amount of resources here, but they are also very, very taxed on the east side. So they've brought resources out of the valley, but cleaning culverts in the storm drain system is a laborious process. Last year in Museum, we were 6-7 weeks to get the system cleaned out. And it's just time. The nice thing in some of these areas we've seen is a lot of the velocities of water have been keeping them more clean, which has been great news. So that rain is actually helping us keep those pipes clean. Excellent question. Paul, I'll let you pick. Sybil.
Thank you. So I live about 1/8 of a mile from Meade, and these events, I track the gauges. I feel like a sitting duck because I don't know what's happening in real time. And I'm wondering if there's some way to launch a drone as an example, or is there some mechanism that we could get real-time data or information on where the water is?
So the gauges are pretty real-time. I think the alert system that the county and West spoke to is the best bet we're going to have at this point. We don't have even that drone example you give. I think it's great. I think we're making a lot of advancements. We were discussing in a group recently the advances we've made since Schultz in 2010 and even since 19. We're getting really, really good with technology and it's been helpful, but it would be great if at one point we could stream an event, but pretty impractical so far, Sybil, but it's a great suggestion.
So we're using informal networks to figure out where's the water, what street got hit, and anyway. Yeah,
it gets to Sam's point. That's why we send out observers. They kind of real-time report. And we're doing good. We can probably take 2 more, and there's a few more. I just want to make sure we get good global questions out first. These are great global questions. I'll get you both.
So on June 23rd of this year, the Forest Service did a review of the post-pipeline fire flood mitigation actions. And in that, it mentions that the Forest Service had received already a number of proposals from the Coconino County and a contractor named Natural Channel Design to repair and install post-mitigation features. I'm wondering, what are those features? Are they different than the basins? And what are the status of some of those proposals?
You know, I'm not the one to answer that. It's going to be a Forest Service question. I'm not trying to dodge a question. I don't have the answer. Okay. We'll follow up on the question. If someone could just note that, let's follow up on that question. We'll get you a response. Yeah, sir.
Yeah, speaking about the culverts in the Rio brought up an issue. There's a lot of vegetation that's grown up over the years in the Rio that's like drainage. It's handling the water flow right now, but it can dam with the effects of driftwood crosswise against the stem. Can citizen volunteers remove vegetation in the bottom of the Rio de Flag in Coconino Scales?
So Ed, let me ask you to answer the question about vegetation removal in the Rio and the efforts you've made, historic flows compared to post-wildfire flows, and then I don't think I'm going to answer your second question because I don't have the good answer for that. I don't want to put myself in a terrible spot. So is that a good question?
No, that's a great question. No, and a lot of the Rio in that area in Coconino Estates was cleaned in 2020, so 2 years ago. There are still, willows grow rather quickly. That's mostly what we have down through there. And they can basically revegetate within 2 years, no problem. The arroyo willow and coyote willow that we have. There have been 2 volunteer events already. So at 2 of the road crossings, and then we've also worked with the county clearing vegetation north of Crescent So a lot of that's been cleaned out. There is a program called Stewards. So that is a volunteer organization. You can find it online. It's done through our sustainability section, the city's sustainability section. And that would probably be the best resource for identifying a volunteer event or identifying a group of volunteers. Short answer, yes, you can clean stuff in the Rio, but you do have to fill out the appropriate waivers and liability forms. But that can all be done through that Stream Stewards program.
So that's a great suggestion, Ed, and I'd forgotten that program. And so it does allow citizens to give us a hand, because you're completely overwhelmed with your team of 2. Yes, sir.
Hey, I live on Savannah Way, and I pass a large amount of discharge through my backyard. Maybe you've heard of it. And we've experienced the floods just head on every time. And we are subject to overflow from an undersized culvert through a bubbler where we got 100% of the discharge from the first flood. And if I recall right, the modeled rainfall that they focused on to develop the maps, which are remarkably useful, and thanks forever for those, is about 700 CFS, I believe, okay. Peak discharge.
Okay.
And so I am really curious as to where we stand on what peak discharges we've actually experienced in the progressively larger floods.
You know, again, excellent question for the engineer team. Let's follow up with that question tonight right after this question.
Okay, I think that everybody should know because it will give them an idea of where we are on the scale.
Okay.
Up towards 700 CFS, because I know we're not close to it yet,
okay.
And that's worrisome.
Okay, I'm going to take one more, very back row, because I didn't go to the very back, and then we're going to have to break off and get everybody to some engineers. But save your questions, make sure you ask them, and then I know, Sarah, you can let people post correct if they want to follow up with questions for written response. They can email that line.
Yeah, please email your questions to info@pipelinewestflooding.com, and we'll be sure to get those answered.
Thank you, Sarah.
So it's been alluded to a few times that the culvert under Fort Valley and then eventually into our neighborhood is kind of goofy and maybe not done. What's the long-term plan there?
We don't know yet. Those engineers will work on it. I mean, clearly we're triage mode. We're doing work as quickly as possible. But they will identify issues within stormwater system, and we will have to address those over time, certainly. That's my best answer for you. I really want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I know this is disruptive. We have got good information. There's good people here to help. Please, let's follow up some good questions tonight. Let's ask them some of the hard questions. If they can't answer them tonight, we'll get you the answer. And if they can't answer them, we'll let you know. We appreciate your patience. Please be aware of what's going on, and let's stay vigilant. We've got about another month and a half or so of this to get through, and then we'll be shoveling snow. Thanks again for coming out tonight, and we appreciate your time.